What is your goal when zoning? You want to explode tiers on top of the opponent. This does chip damage and is multi-hit, which prevents them from push blocking you out. This allows you to control the pace of the game, whether you want to chip them or decide you want to go in now. Parasouls do this by spamming her H-shot. This H-shot spam has a huge weakness though, and that is after every tier explosion, you need to place a new tier on them, which gives them an opportunity to escape. To prevent them from escaping, you can read their super jump with an M-shot. If the read works and they block M-shot, you get to continue zoning them. However, if it doesn't work and M-shot whiffs, they will now be able to dash in and punish you if you decide to use another shot. Your zoning is now over. And this is why I recommend having a horizontal assist to use with M-shot to cover both the airspace and the ground space. In situations where you know there's a gap they can get through, if you want to keep zoning, go for screen coverage. If you are not utilizing an assist, your zoning will only be as tight as you can make the correct read. You'll need to transition into spacing much more frequently if they dodge your M-shot. At this point, all this is a basic knowledge check that the opponent can easily navigate once they understand it. How should we proceed from here? Use your zoning tools to make the timing of their approach predictable. Zoning them is high risk for little reward generally. If you get hit, you die. If they get hit, they lose some health. We need to get a lot more than some chip damage and meter. Since we know where the gaps in our zoning are, we can invite the opponent to approach in a way that we're expecting and then counter hit them when we see them commit to something. Comboing the opponent is a much safer way to do damage rather than continuing to zone, so when the opportunity arises, take it. If you keep running, you'll eventually reach the corner, so you must take back space when you're able to. You can approach after they block an L shot and react to what they're doing next by abusing your dash speed, or if you get push blocked out, you can continue to zone. Being good at Parasoul Zoning is a threat that you use to facilitate her extremely strong neutral tool. Dash is not only good at pressuring from zoning, it is also good for maintaining the space you need to continue zoning and keeping your opponents on the edge of your tools. Your grounded dash is as fast as most air dashes, but you can do it repeatedly, while the opponent has to land or use a special to catch up. You can generate a lot of space by knowing when to backdash early instead of trying to zone. That space is then used to make them block into an approach or to do more zoning. Now that we understand the theory behind our zoning, how exactly do I zone? First, let's look at our combo pieces. H-shot, fast tier used to detonate pre-existing tiers. Your primary way of making double tier explosions. If the opponent made a mistake and got opened up by a double tier explosion, you can combo into H-shot from anywhere on the screen. However, if they're not full screen, use L-shot, because H-shot with less travel time makes it hard to get more charges. In neutral, H-shot is a full screen option only. You will get punished for it if you use it any closer because of its long recovery. If you know the opponent is forced to block a double tier explosion on the next projectile, just do H-shot after. If they got hit by it, you get a hit confirm, and if they didn't, they just blocked another projectile. Of course, there will be a gap if they blocked, but you can play around it since you are already aware of that before the next projectile even arrived. M-shot, slow tier that covers the ground first, then travels diagonally upwards. You can use this shot to detonate nearby tiers, but beware its recovery. It can be a risky option unless you cover it using an assist. Otherwise, the opponent can still jump over and punish you if they're close enough. Against tall characters, using this at a closer range like mid-screen to detonate a tier can be very strong. It can also be used against characters with runs or sweeps that low profile M-shot. M-shot can be combined with an assist to cover a ton of space at full screen, and the assist can be used to protect M-shot from being punished at closer ranges. This is your main tool for covering the gap after H-shot, but results may vary without an assist, since the opponent can just dash forward to dodge it. L-shot, slow tier with very little recovery. This shot will let you perform a lot of actions after using it, and is a great way to begin an approach or a retreat. If the opponent has an option without hit stop to punish your tiers, L-shot can be used to bait it and still block afterwards due to its slow recovery. At closer ranges, probably the optimal, non-normal way to detonate tiers unless they can low profile it. The slowness of the tier can be used in your favor to approach or to throw off the opponent's gap timing. A very good tier in most situations. You can combine it with a vertical assist to cover a lot of space and protect yourself from jump-ins. If the spacing allows for it, you can double tier detonate by using L-shot into L-shot, usually when you can't combo from 2 MP. Trigger or detonate. You can cause a big explosion without using 2 tiers or a normal by manually detonating using Napalm trigger. Keep in mind, due to the recovery of this special, you are actually a bit minus after they block a manually dead tier explosion. You can use this to create a gap in your zoning for them to approach through, or combine it with an assist to force them to block the assist. Off of any tier that hits the opponent, detonate can be used to extend the combo. A stray hit at full screen will usually result in napalm trigger into sniper or bikes. However, bikes will only combo if they were grounded and you had no delay in your super cancel. Opponents who like to dash or super jump after blocking one tier can often get frame trapped with a blocked tier into napalm trigger. Napalm toss. Napalm toss has many variations, and you can control where the tiers end up by holding the button after the tier is tossed. You can use this feature to set up tier explosions in different angles, but personally I find this unwieldy. You can also chain together tosses in what's known as a reca input. You only have to input the quarter circle once, then you can press the kicks up to 3 times for 3 specials. I generally just use tosses to make the space more threatening, or to set up a tier to detonate later. A feature of Parasoul's projectiles is that you normally cannot shoot another tier while a tier is traveling on the screen. This is called tier travel time. If you are firing shots as soon as you are able to, you may often get a normal after an opponent low profiles your projectile, since the tier is still traveling on the screen because they didn't block it. Because toss is not a shot, you can actually throw tosses after a shot faster than you can throw another shot, since you don't have to wait for the tier to stop moving. This also works the other way around, where you can input a shot before the tier finishes falling, as long as you time it after the napalm toss reca window. These tosses don't have hitboxes, so using them will often make a gap in your zoning. I like to cover these gaps with an assist, or when I know they can't act. Some examples of that are when they're falling after blocking M shot, when they're about to block a double tier explosion from L shot, or when I use the toss by combining it with my assist macro. I like to throw H tosses onto leftover tiers that I know will explode soon to make a double tier explosion. The timing for this toss is one whiffed tier, then toss. Just be aware that even that technique has gaps, and be ready to counter hit their approach or reposition using your dashes. You can also use L toss to expand the range of your detonating normals like 2 MP, 5 HP, or JHP. This is a good preemptive defense when you know that the opponent is about to get in on you. M-toss is interesting because it threatens a similar space to M-shot, however you cannot detonate M-toss with M-shot unless you hold it. If you wanted to preemptively threaten that airspace, using a partial charge of H-toss arrives there sooner and is also detonated with M-shot. I personally rarely use M-toss unless I want to scare my opponent into not entering that space using the threat of detonate. It's pretty hard to react to them entering the M-toss range with detonate while doing all your other zoning, in my opinion, so I don't use it much personally, but it could be good with the space your team covers with it. You can use it to stuff air approaches by combining it with the super jump heavy kick. If you're beginning to near the corner, you can set one up preemptively to bomb jump off of as your opponent approaches so you swap sides, but this is very slow, so I wouldn't recommend it without protecting yourself first with an assist. Bonus tip, when recaing with the tosses, make sure you use the heavies first and then descend in the order, because the heavy tiers have longer distance to travel. Bike Guy. H-egret is a good tool against characters that want to armor, reflect, projectile invul, parry, and sometimes low profile L and H shots, although in many cases it will just break. Use it to mess with their timings, when should I zone and when shouldn't I. Personally, I like to think of the screen in 3 sections or zones. Where the opponent is determines if I'm allowed to use a tool or not. Let's describe them with colors for now and go over the tools you can use in each zone. Green is the safe zone. I can throw out almost any projectile I want without being punished for it. They might avoid it, but you still have time to perform an action before you have to block. So in the zoning zone, you can use stuff like H-shot / L-shot, M-shot plus assist, any of the tosses, Bike Guy, pretty much all of the aforementioned techniques. Yellow is the risky zone, where I should either transition into playing spacing keep away Parasoul, or dash away to make space and start zoning again. This is the spacing where your opponent will usually try to jump over, low profile, or assist through your next shot to punish you. I like to think of the yellow zone as the spacing zone, where your options are either to reposition or counter them. To counter them and make them block, you can use L-shot if they cannot jump, like if they're landing, or L-shot plus vertical assist. You can also do up-back and then use an L-toss and a detonating button, so jump light punch or jump heavy punch. You can use 5 HP anti-air, 2 MP shot, and 2 MP, or you can do sweep special and then try to be armor. Or you could just straight up counter hit them by using up forward jump light punch or jump light kick, or dash and then go for a low throw. The tools you have to reposition are backdashing, super jump, jump heavy kick, or M-toss, JMK for the bomb float. You could also call assist and run away. Just be careful, if they're already in a bad position, you could get happy birthdayed. The red zone is the danger zone. If they're here, you made a mistake and you have to block and push block them away from you so that you can reposition or reversal. This range is basically the inside of your big disjointed normals where you'd get counter hit for even backdashing. So red zone, defend or mash. Here you can block to get a push block, up back to get a land cancel, pillar, and if you push block them you can super jump JHK out. Whenever I zone, I maneuver to keep them inside the green zone when I can, but if I begin to approach the corner, I switch to playing more aggressively and try to take back the space I gave them earlier, or side switch so that they're in the corner. If you manage to get them into the corner, it's better to lock them down with L shots, since your L shots won't have to travel as far. There's less of a gap and you can pressure them much harder than you could full screen, while also being relatively safer. In certain matchups, the yellow risky zone changes a lot based on the tools they have to get into your red zone. For example, versus Big Band and Annie, you'll have to reposition a lot sooner than versus Fortune or Philia, since Band can brass and Annie can dive kick, which both hit from further away than standard movement tools. Not every yellow zone tool will work against these tools, so make sure you come up with a plan ahead of time to deal with these options. Like versus Band, I'll only L shot and wait briefly before shooting another L shot because it recovers before brass will land. Or I will start backdashing every time Annie jumps and wait for her to commit to air dash or dive kick before I do anything. Against Miss Fortune, I will not use L shot when she enters the yellow zone and instead up back L toss JHP, so she has to block a disjointed air normal on her approach. If they have brass or beam, I try to extend the risky zone by 1 air dash length, because I will be forced to block a lot earlier thanks to those assists. This looks like me preemptively backdashing a lot earlier, or setting up an M-toss while they're still pretty far away so I have an escape option when they call their assist. It's also good to avoid calling your assist first and try to beat them with 1v1 spacing until they call their assist so you can counter call yourself. The reason I divide my tools up into ranges is because to get the most value out of her zoning, her tools must be automatic responses. You want to gather information about the opponent while her tools are moving, so you cannot be thinking about which option do I want to use. Where your opponent is on the screen determines whether an option is right or wrong, so planning it ahead of time makes using the right option into a reflex. That's basically it for the zoning guide. Let's go over a drill that you can use to get used to these ideas in a low pressure environment. I like to play against the Nightmare Mode CPU with the clause that I'm not allowed to combo them for more than one chain. I'm allowed to try and hit them when they approach me in a predictable fashion, and if you predict them correctly, kick them away and start zoning again. If you are close to the corner, you may fight your way out. Don't forget to practice extending from your stray hits as long as possible using H-shot, trigger, sniper. Once switching gears from zoning to blocking to spacing becomes natural for you, start doing this in quick match, but now you can kill the opponent with resets when you get the chance. Keep in mind there are certain matchups you lose at zoning, so any tiers you explode on them need to be used to get in on them as soon as possible. For example, versus Peacock, RoboFortune, and Squiggly. I usually practice against the Philia bot, but make sure to also get practice against Miss Fortune so you get used to her running under your shots. In summary, Parasoul Zoning is about playing around the gaps of your zoning patterns and gathering information about your opponent while your tiers travel. You can use this information to keep zoning by covering the gaps where you think they want to escape, or to hit them out of their approach when they become predictable. The time spent zoning gives you extra time to think about where the opponent is, what options they have to hit you, and what you should be doing next to avoid losing your turn, or when you should go in to counter hit them. Put simply, Parasoul Zoning creates time for you to be one step ahead of your opponent. If this video helped you at all, please leave a comment below and share this video. It helps with the algorithm a ton and I very much appreciate it. That's all for today's Stray Cats Cafe special. I hope you enjoyed your stay here. Peace!